Have you ever imagined a moment when everything could end in a second and an ordinary dog decides not to allow it? In the blink of an eye, a peaceful afternoon can turn into a nightmare. And that's exactly what happened when a dog faced off against a pit bull to save a baby. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you and touch your heart in a way few stories can. Imagine the scene: a stroller, muffled giggles, the routine of a family that, like so many others, relies on the love and protection of their home. Now imagine this scene torn apart by barking, running around, and a sense of urgency so strong it inhibits reason. It was there, in that moment of shock and fear, that a family dog made a decision that seemed straight out of a movie. But it wasn't a movie. It was real. It was a dog who faced down a pit bull to save a baby. The word hero often sounds exaggerated when we talk about animals, but if there's a word that describes that act, perhaps it's this one. As I tell this story, think about your relationship with animals. Have you ever experienced a situation where a dog acted unexpectedly, protecting someone without expecting anything in return? Stories of dogs saving lives aren't just viral. They offer lessons about instinct, loyalty, and the ability these animals have to understand danger far beyond what we imagine. In this video, we'll dive deep into that critical moment, step by step, to understand not only what happened, but also why it matters to those who live with dogs and those who love real stories of courage. What makes this case different from so many other accounts of canine bravery? It's not just the confrontation itself, but the details surrounding the action. The dog's speed, the positioning that averted the danger, the reaction of the family and those around. I'll take you to the heart of the scene, without sensationalism, with respect, and with the emotion it deserves. And as we continue, I'll also point out practical signs for recognizing danger in public places and explain how small actions can prevent similar tragedies. This is essential for anyone who frequents parks, sidewalks, and areas where our dogs and our children roam. I don't want to just tell you what happened. I want to connect you with every second of that moment. Feel the hitched breath, the sound of hurried footsteps, the silence that precedes the action. Imagine the baby's eyes, the protective presence of the dog, and the shock as real danger approaches. This introduction is just the beginning. Next, we'll hear from witnesses, see images that may exist, and unravel how an ancestral instinct can transform a domestic animal into a savior amidst chaos. If this story has already touched a chord within, you leave your reaction in the comments as soon as the video starts playing. Share if you have a similar story of a dog saving someone. We want to read it. Now get ready. Let's delve into the details of the incident, understand the chronology of events, and meet the protagonist of this story, the dog who chose courage at the decisive moment. Stay with me, because the next part reveals how a single act can change lives and show what it truly means to have a dog by our side. And as the story unfolds, I want to ask you for something quick, and it makes all the difference. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what touched you most, share a similar experience, or simply write about how your heart was touched when you heard about this moment. Your participation isn't just a reaction, it's the thread that connects others who also need to hear these stories of courage. When you comment, other families, dog owners and animal lovers can find comfort, learning, and even warnings to avoid danger, and this transforms a simple story into a real support network. If this narrative has already touched you, please like the video too. A like is a small gesture that greatly helps the channel reach more people and keep alive the mission of telling true stories of dogs who save lives. And if you want to continue watching videos like this, with moving stories, analysis of what happened, and practical tips to protect your family and pet, subscribe to the channel. That's how I can produce more reports, verify information, and bring testimonies that matter. This isn't advertising. It's recognition of the value of each shared story. Your like shows that this content matters. Your comment brings new voices and experiences, and your subscription ensures that we'll continue together on this journey of courage, learning, and love for animals. So before we move on to the details of what happened in that critical moment, leave your message below. I read them all and often use your stories to inspire future videos. Now back to the scene. Let's follow the minute-by-minute account of that encounter that changed everything and discover exactly how the dog came between danger and the baby. That seemingly ordinary afternoon took on the feel of a movie. In the seconds, everything changed. And to understand why, we need to look at the details that often remain behind the scenes of viral stories. Little João was just 1 year old, his curious eyes following every movement of the stroller, while his mother, Maria, chatted with a neighbor on the sidewalk. His father, Carlos, adjusted the bag, never imagining that in a few moments the routine would push everyone to their limits. Thor, the family's puppy, was a 3-year-old mixed breed, a constant presence in the house, accustomed to sleeping at the foot of the couple's bed, receiving cuddles and protecting the yard as if it were his own mission. Those who knew Thor knew of his calm personality, that watchful gaze that inspired security, but rarely would anyone imagine that this same calm concealed an almost instinctive readiness for life or death decisions. Witnesses who were in the area, neighbors, who often walk their pets, and an employee at a nearby store, reported what they saw when it all happened. There's also footage from a security camera installed on the facade of a building, which clearly, and without sensationalism, shows the movements that transformed an everyday moment into an episode of courage. The local authorities filed a report about the incident, and this evidence, when gathered, gives us more than emotion. It gives us credibility. It's not just a story to move us. It's a case that allows for analysis, learning, and reflection on instinct, decision-making, and responsibility. And it's precisely this hidden truth, often overlooked by those who simply consume the content, that I want to share with you here. Not to transform the narrative into a heroic cliché, but to reveal the real impact that an isolated action can have on a family's journey. Looking at João, we also see the transformation that stories like this provoke in those around him. It's not uncommon for an episode of animal bravery to reverberate throughout the community, changing mindsets about responsible ownership, vigilance in public spaces, and the importance of understanding one's own dog's behavior. The initial reaction, before the analysis, was pure emotion, screams, tears, and running. Then came the tougher questions. Why was the Pitbull loose there? What could have been done to prevent it? How did Thor know exactly what to do? These questions take us behind the scenes, to the owner's decisions, the signage in the area, and the culture of negligent treatment of large dogs. Here, I'm not simply judging. I'm pointing to a set of factors that, when aligned, can reduce tragedies. And it's at this point that Thor's story intersects with something bigger, the need for a practical shift in the mindset of those who live with animals and those who care for public spaces. Thor didn't jump into the confrontation out of pride or theatrics. Most canine behavior experts would agree that in threatening situations, many dogs act out of protective instinct to preserve what they recognize as family. Loyalty is deeply rooted in the history of the species, and in a moment of pressure, all of this manifests as a pure and immediate decision. The neighbor who witnessed the incident described the scene with simple but meaningful words. He went in front of the stroller and positioned himself between the baby and the other dog, as if to say, "Not here." The camera, in turn, records the movement, and the police report adds formality to the account. not to transform the episode into statistics, but to record that something happened and that responsibility must be assessed. These elements together construct a robust narrative where emotion and authority walk hand in hand. What intrigues me most about these types of events is how, after the initial shock, families begin a small journey of healing and reflection. Maria and Carlos, according to reports, experienced a whirlwind of emotions: indescribable relief at seeing João unharmed, guilt for having underestimated the risk, profound gratitude for Thor, and an almost therapeutic desire to understand everything that could have been different. The transformation that follows is not only physical, scars, bandages, visits to the vet, but also psychological and social. Friends, neighbors, and strangers reach out, offer help, give affection, and often contribute to a change in mindset. Within the community, this is where the story takes on another layer. It ceases to be just an isolated event and becomes an impactful case, capable of generating small changes in the coexistence between humans and animals in the neighborhood. When we allow ourselves to look behind the scenes, we also notice the practical revelations that emerge: yard maintenance, door and gate control, the use of muzzles in appropriate environments, the responsibility of those walking large dogs, and even the simple act of paying attention to the surroundings. These aren't spectacular measures, but everyday decisions that change probabilities, and it's precisely this combination of small gestures and decisions that can transform a tragic outcome into an inspiring one. In this sense, Thor's story offers us more than emotion. It presents us with a practical manual, implicit but real, on how to act, how to prevent, and how to react when adrenaline surges and the human brain doesn't always have time to process each step. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. I want to show you the subtle signs that often precede a conflict between dogs in public spaces, explain why some behaviors can be mistaken for play, when in fact they are real warning signs of danger. I'll also talk about the long-lasting emotional impact on families who experience these situations, and how the community can be part of the solution, not just part of the drama. From these points, we can draw valuable lessons for anyone who has a pet or lives with stray animals. Comment below, this makes sense to me. It was as if time had slowed down. Maria was still laughing at something her neighbor had just said when a metallic sound echoed from a nearby gate. The noise was followed by a loud, heavy bark that made the air seem thicker. Thor, who had been lying next to João's stroller, raised his head and became alert, as if he had sensed something no one else there had yet noticed. In a matter of seconds, the scene changed. A pitbull, apparently off-leash, emerged from the wide-open gate and began charging forward. There was no warning. It was fast. The pitbull lunged. The baby cried. Thor jumped. The sound of footsteps on the asphalt mingled with the neighbor's screams. Maria instinctively pulled the cart back, but the space was tight, and her heart raced as she realized there wouldn't be enough time. Thor's gaze fixed on the danger. He growled once, low, almost like a silent promise that nothing would get past him, and then he lunged forward with a speed that surprised even those who knew him. The impact of their bodies colliding was sharp, forceful, and for a second, all that could be heard was the sound of paws scraping the ground and teeth meeting. Carlos ran toward the two dogs, but he was only a few meters away. The path felt longer than it actually was. The world shrank into that struggle. Thor used his own body as a shield, always keeping himself between the pitbull and the cart, as if he knew exactly what his role was. The tension was so intense that even the neighbors, watching from afar, froze, some with their hands over their mouths, unable to react. Maria's breathing became shallow, almost inaudible, and she felt her legs trembling, but she never took her eyes off Thor. The building security camera captured the moment the pitbull attempted a second attack. Thor spun his body, using his weight to destabilize his opponent, and for what seemed like an eternity, the two remained at a standoff. It was at that moment that Carlos managed to reach the dogs, using a piece of wood to separate them. The neighbor, at the same time, picked up João, pulling him away. The baby's cries filled the air like a warning soundtrack, a painful reminder of how close everyone had come to tragedy. When the Pitbull's owner finally appeared, running and screaming, it was too late. The scene had left its mark on everyone present. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Thor, panting, had small marks on his body, but his gaze was still, fixed on the gate, as if expecting more danger. Maria's heart was beating so fast she could feel it vibrating in her chest. Carlos hugged them both, smelling the dust and sweat mixed with the dog's fur. It was impossible not to think about the fine line between disaster and miracle. Those few seconds had changed everything: the family's mindset, their view of the neighborhood's safety, and especially the value they placed on their four-legged companion who, without hesitation, transformed instinct into heroic action. That was the moment when the hidden truth of human-dog relationships became clear. It's not just about coexistence, but about partnership, about split-second decisions, and about lasting emotional impact. Those who witnessed that scene later reported feeling something shift inside them. Some began to better restrain their own dogs. Others decided to reinforce gates and fences. It was as if that episode had triggered a collective transformation, a vivid reminder that small daily choices have consequences that can save or endanger lives. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding what goes on in a dog's mind in moments like these can help many people prevent dangerous situations and even save lives. There are signs, almost imperceptible to the uninitiated, that indicate when a dog is about to attack or defend someone. Knowing these signs is like accessing a series of revelations about animal behavior, and it completely changes how we react in critical situations. Furthermore, João's own family began to study more about canine behavior, how to train and socialize dogs, and what decisions could make the neighborhood a safer place for everyone. This learning process, which began with fear and shock, became a journey of discovery, where every small gesture counts. And you, by following this story, may realize how much your own daily choices can protect those you love. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because it's precisely in the immediate aftermath of the rescue that the true extent of the impact begins to reveal itself. And it's also here that the decisions made in the first few minutes reveal whether the transformation will be merely emotional or whether it will translate into concrete actions that protect lives. After the tense separation of the dogs, when the neighbor was already holding João in her arms and Carlos was trying to control his breathing, the priority was clear. Check every sign, every injury, every reaction. The baby was crying, but crying out of fright, his eyes swollen, his hands covered in small scratches, and his dress wrinkled with panic. A neighbor called emergency services, and another brought cold compresses. The quick response was decisive. Within minutes, professionals assessed João and determined that despite the fright, he hadn't suffered serious injuries. This brought a relief that seemed insufficient, given the emotional toll the episode would leave. But it was the first milestone in a journey of recovery that would involve not only bandages, but also conversations, tears, and important decisions about safety. Thor, on the other hand, bore signs of that intervention: superficial scratches, a bite that required a few stitches, and much concern on the part of the family. Taking the dog to the vet was an obvious choice, but also a decision laden with meaning. At the vet's office, the vet explained in a firm, calm voice that the priority was to treat the wounds, to prevent infection, administer painkillers, and start preventive medication. He also emphasized something many prefer to ignore: an animal's behavior after a confrontation can reveal important information about its mental health and stress levels. Thor received care, bandages, and attention that at that moment were much more than medical procedures. They were tangible recognition that the act had cost something. The presence of authorities brought an additional layer of formality and responsibility. The police report filed at the scene wasn't just a document, it was the link between emotion and consequence. It contained witness statements, a description of the incident, and information that could eventually lead to legal or administrative action against the Pitbull's owner. The police spoke with residents, noting details about the condition of the gate and the lack of adequate restraint. These notes, however bureaucratic they may seem, are part of the backstage of any real change. They can result in fines, demands for repairs to the property, or even a lawsuit forcing the owner to answer for negligence. It's the kind of decision that shifts the community's mindset from "it happened and that's it" to "this can't happen again." As injuries were treated and reports were filed, something curious and powerful was happening among the people. The town, at least that street, showed a willingness to transform. Neighbors who previously barely exchanged a good morning began offering help, food, and support with the family's daily tasks. A wave of solidarity was born from fear and relief, and the emotional impact translated into concrete actions. Someone offered to fix the gate, another offered to train Thor, and a neighbor coordinated a fundraiser to cover veterinary expenses and potential legal fees. These collective decisions show that when a community faces the hidden truth behind an accident, negligence, lack of responsibility, poorly closed doors, it can respond with measures that change the reality of that place. The repercussions also reach social media, but in a controlled manner and with a cautious tone. Photos of the rescue and testimonies circulated not to fuel sensationalism, but to document the facts and alert other families. This is where the role of narratives bifurcates. On the one hand, there's the legitimate desire to share and celebrate a hero. On the other, there's the responsibility to not turn the episode into a spectacle that encourages hasty judgments or unnecessary exposure of the victims. The family's decision to share only the essentials, blurred images of the rescue, simple accounts and gratitude, was strategic and sensible. It reinforces that the transformation we seek must be accompanied by respect and empathy, not exploitation. From a practical standpoint, the physical and administrative consequences were quickly followed by a process of emotional reconstruction. Maria told friends that in the following days she had difficulty returning to the place where it all happened. Images of the empty stroller brought back vivid memories. Carlos, for his part, felt torn between gratitude and guilt. Gratitude to Thor for that instinct that saved his son's life, guilt for having underestimated a risk that now seems obvious. These feelings prompted serious conversations about future decisions, reinforcing the gate locks, a routine of checking before going out, and a renewed commitment to neighborhood safety. Transformation isn't just about healing wounds. It's about rebuilding routines based on a new mindset, and technical lessons also emerged, ones few realize until they're faced with a real event. Veterinarians explained that prompt wound cleaning and preventive medication reduce the risk of infection. Security officials recommended that owners of large dogs use leashes and muzzles in public areas when there's a risk. Neighbors reported that simply reinforcing locks and hinges often prevents accidents. None of this is glamorous. These are practical, low-cost decisions with a high impact. These small changes, when added together, produce a true transformation in everyday life. The human impact finally brought Thor recognition. Not the kind of recognition sought through awards, but the simple, genuine kind. Affection, guaranteed veterinary care, rest, and respect. The family began to see the dog not just as a pet, but as a member whose presence is meaningful and whose well-being is a priority. It's a paradigm shift that often only occurs after a shock, a shift in mindset that encourages better decision-making, prevents, and educates. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic and explain how, from these consequences, practical actions emerge that anyone can apply to reduce risks and increase safety in their environment. I want to show, calmly and in detail, the warning signs of a conflict between dogs, what an adult should do the moment a confrontation begins, and what structural measures help prevent an open gate from turning into an emergency. These behind-the-scenes revelations aren't theoretical. They come from direct experience that afternoon and from conversations with professionals who were called in. And that's why I want to take you with me on this step-by-step analysis, because understanding these everyday decisions can make all the difference between a tragedy and an ending filled with lessons and healing. Comment: this makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because the lessons emerging from this moment aren't just for a sigh of relief. They deserve to be understood calmly, so that the transformation they brought about in the family and neighborhood becomes practical in the lives of others. The impact was physical, evident in the bandages and the trips to the vet, but it was also psychological and social, a true journey through the complex journey of caring for children, raising animals, and making daily decisions that, combined, define the safety of our surroundings. When we think about prevention, we often limit ourselves to clichés, but the hidden truth is that prevention is built with small, repeated actions. Checking gates, learning the temperaments of dogs in the neighborhood, talking to neighbors about walking and restraint routines. These are decisions that change mindsets. They are simple, almost invisible gestures that end up saving lives when the decisive moment arrives. Revisiting Thor and Joan's case, we see that the puppy's courage exposed structural and behavioral flaws hidden behind the scenes in everyday life. The unlocked gate, the lack of documentation regarding the loose animal, or even the normalization of seeing large dogs without a leash in areas where children are present. All of this creates a risk scenario that needs to be addressed with common sense, not panic. After the incident, the family underwent a real transformation. Routines became more routine, their mindset became more preventative, and decisions were guided by a new understanding of responsibility. It's not about assigning blame, but about recognizing that every choice, from properly securing a door to reporting an irregularity to the building manager or city hall, has a direct impact on collective safety. These revelations were reinforced by professionals consulted after the incident. A veterinarian explained that in addition to treating Thor physically, it was essential to observe behavioral signs of post-confrontation stress, changes in appetite, restless sleep, reactions to noises and social contact. Child psychologists, in turn, said that babies exposed to high-stress situations can have reactions ranging from fleeting fright to a temporary need for a more welcoming routine, with the presence and security of their parents. Security agents, meanwhile, reinforced the idea that administrative measures such as formal notifications, gate repairs, and awareness campaigns transform isolated episodes into collective learning. All of this forms a web of actions that together represent the true lesson of history. Courage without structure is risk. Courage with responsibility becomes an example and a change. Thor's appreciation came not as a spectacle, but as natural and necessary recognition. He received care, rest, and attention, and the family began to prioritize his well-being, understanding that rewarding heroes also means caring for them. There's something symbolic about this. When a community decides to protect those who protect, it demonstrates that it has learned from experience, that it understands that protection is a shared responsibility. And this learning manifests itself in practical actions, neighbors helping to reinforce the gate, merchants installing signage, local groups organizing collective efforts for small infrastructure improvements. The transformation that seemed merely emotional took on tangible forms, and this is the kind of impact that transforms neighborhoods and mindsets over time. Another important layer to this story is its ethical burden. The immediate reaction seeks heroes and villains, but calm analysis reveals that the truth is nuanced. There are negligent owners, yes, but there are also flawed systems, from a lack of oversight to the absence of educational campaigns that provide real support to pet owners. This behind-the-scenes revelation calls for political and community decisions that aren't solely dependent on extreme incidents to be implemented. Education about responsible pet ownership, encouraging basic training, public policies that facilitate the safe containment of animals in public spaces, and accessibility for formal complaints are measures that, together, reduce the likelihood of new incidents. The journey to safer coexistence is made up of small but steady steps, and each of us can contribute. On an individual level, the lessons are equally practical and direct. Learning to identify signs of aggression in dogs, erect posture, raised fur, continuous growling, fixed gaze, is knowing how to read the environment like reading a language. Knowing how to act in the event of a confrontation, remaining calm, avoiding sudden movements, protecting children with your body if necessary, and reaching for objects to safely separate them, is life-saving knowledge. Furthermore, simple administrative decisions, such as keeping documents and vaccinations up to date, using appropriate collars and leashes, and educating our children about animal behavior, make up an effective prevention strategy. These are practical insights, drawn from the behind-the-scenes of the incident that can and should be applied by anyone who lives with pets or in public spaces frequented by families. The emotional impact, however, requires care. João's family had to deal with guilt, relief, and gratitude all at once, emotions that require processing. The recovery journey included therapeutic conversations, support from neighbors, and moments of reaffirming the bond with Thor. This shows that in addition to practical measures, it's necessary to offer social support and a space to talk about what happened without judgment. A community that wants to transform not only punishes negligence when necessary, but also welcomes and educates, creating a virtuous cycle of learning. This is the true change in mindset we hope to see. Fewer full stops in tragedies and more paragraphs dedicated to reconstruction and prevention. And finally, there's a weighty reflection. How often do we ignore signs out of convenience or because we think it won't happen here? The question serves as an invitation to conscious decision. Every small habit we change, locking a gate, holding a leash firmly, paying attention to the environment before sitting on the sidewalk with a child, is part of a larger safety net. The story of Thor and João reminds us that courage can come from anywhere, but responsibility belongs to everyone. When we act together, the impact is profound. We prevent injuries, preserve lives, and transform the culture of a place. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic and show, with practical examples and clear explanations, how to recognize early warning signs and what decisions to make in crucial moments. I'll talk about simple techniques that help reduce risks and how to rebuild confidence after a scare. Below, we'll detail these measures step by step based on reports, professional recommendations, and revelations that only emerge when you take a close look behind the scenes of a real event. Comment below. This makes sense to me. If you've made it this far, thank you for following closely. Before you continue, I have a simple request. If this story touched you or prompted any reflection, leave the phrase, "I'm with you until the SAR," End in the comments, so I know you've been with me on this journey. Seeing these responses helps me understand what truly matters to you. If something in this story resonated with you, please leave a like. It's a small gesture, but it shows that the connection has been made and that it's worth continuing to bring more stories and practical guidance like this. If you'd like more content like this, real stories, analyses, and useful tips to protect your family and pet, subscribe to the channel. That's how I can maintain this work and delve even deeper into the topics we raised today. There's a video here that complements this topic on signs and prevention in public spaces. Click and stay with me there so we can continue investigating and learning together. See you soon.